Welcome back and thanks for still being there. This is still Rise and Shine, the Friday edition, of course, bringing you topical issues of things happening in Nigeria, in-depth evaluation, especially from the human angle end of how these issues and policies being made by the federal government affects the everyday Nigerian. What does it mean for our economy? What does it mean for Nigerians at large? But of course, we've had several conversations. For you to catch up on everything that we have done in Rise and Shine today, do also follow us across social media platforms, all of which you can find at Spectrum TV Live. Of course, we stream our content live on our website 247. We also have it available on YouTube, so you can always catch up on all that and engage us in a conversation. Like, share, comment, and would absolutely love to get the feedback from you. But this morning, I'm being joined by Matthew O'Connor, who is the founder of Open Forum Nigeria. Of course, people who look into very strong human-related issues as human rights and all of those advocacy things. Good morning, Citizen O'Connor. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Yeah, good to be here once again.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, how is Nigeria this Friday morning? It's been a whole week and a lot of things have happened. Top of the table is all of the judgments from the appeal court, sacking one governor, sacking one lawmaker, all of that back and forth. As of this morning, the front pages of our papers, we are seeing that the appeal court for Nasarawa State has revoked the verdict of the tribunal. So there's a little back and forth, with election petitions, and we see Elders Forum in the north asking the judiciary to take heed to their activities. So, my first question is, how is Nigeria in the light of all of these things this morning?
Well, thank you. I want to say that Nigeria is in the maternity ward. We are going through labor pangs, and we are believing that with concerted efforts from patriots, we'll be able to surmount the challenges that have taken a completely new dimension, unlike any other time in the history of this country. We are aware that several institutions have been corrupted by political influences, and the latest, which is on the spotlight, is the one that when there was a hashtag about a month or two ago, all eyes on the judiciary, it was like an insult, it was like an embarrassment, it was like whatever people, and even the judiciary itself termed it. They were very uncomfortable with all eyes on judiciary, but it is now obvious that all eyes should indeed be on the judiciary, and not just that. The fact that corruption has taken so much root and the level of poverty has plunged once thriving country to the world's capital of extreme poverty, and all talks now is about updating social registers, including in states that are supposed to be models of success of governance. So it's a thing of very serious concern that anybody that says we are fine, we may need to possibly ask that kind of person or such group of people pertinent questions. Let them answer the basic questions. Do we have the welfare and security of citizens, which are the primary responsibility of government? Do we have them? The answer will be no. And if that answer is no, you can imagine how bad the situation is. But I speak as a patriot. I speak as somebody who is working for the improvement of society 24/7. So I have hope that definitely there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that light, for me, is not that of a coming train. It is truly a light which, if we come together, we'll get there and we'll look back and say, oh, thank God, we made it.
It's quite difficult to have hope in Nigeria as of this time, but it's beautiful to see that at a time where it looks like it's constricted, the Tinubu-led administration is literally going by the mantra renewed hope. So let's see how this goes. But this serious, troubling conversation, the federal government is moving to probe workers and staff members of the correctional facility because there are very strong allegations that they are aiding and abetting Boko Haram activities and insecurity-related, terrorism-related activities. Workers, staff members of the correctional facility. More like you have people that have been remanded in the prisons and in these facilities, but yet they're having people who are collaborating with them to perform mayhem in the society. What with insecurity and security of the state of the nation? What are your thoughts? How viable is this report, and what exactly should the body language of the federal government be beyond probing?
The reality is that the probe itself is belated. And the fact that the issues being bandied about is like we don't have evidence that we can just bring to the fore, or no people have not been picked up for questioning. We will have been getting report of what the security agencies have done. Why? You look back at I think it was Kuje prison break, where over 800 or thereabout very hardened terrorists and criminals were released. They did not release themselves. The place was invaded by terrorists and bandits, and the entire security apparatus were disengaged. And the then minister had no response. It shows complicity beyond those who work in those facilities. Look at the release of, was it about 100 or so of them in Lagos? It was a newspaper report, a news report that said federal government has released this number of terrorists. People suspected it was a fake news until government came out to own up. So what has been happening in the country, particularly from the last administration, is that we are not sure who we are dealing with when it comes to security matters. So for me, I'm happy that the National Assembly invited security chiefs. It's because of the conversations that came up that very information was made available. They should do more than that, because I'm sure even citizens know more because they see what has been happening and they can read meaning. You cannot fault them. If a whole security arrangement in a maximum security prison was not there when invaders came to release inmates, and how many of them were recaptured? If some were even released without any jailbreak, that they are repentant, or is it in Imo State? It's not peculiar to in the north. One will say Okuje prison, Abuja, or Krikri in Lagos. The prison in Imo State, there was jailbreak or whatever it's called. How many people were rearrested? Who were the brain behind it? And when you look at the economy of the country and the fact that some persons have to transform wherever they operate to their gold mine or to their oil wells, you cannot but know that some very prominent inmates, some of them prominent by themselves, some of them are being sponsored by well-to-do people. When they are in those facilities, there will be contact. So you have some persons who may be given very special attention, and then the connections. It's a network until we are ready to confront insecurity, the perpetrators, no matter how highly placed, including the last administration that supervised the ministry when hardened criminals and bandits and terrorists were released until today. That marked the end of it. So I want them to do much, much more than that.
Speaking of, these incidents at the correctional facilities, just this week, a memo has been sent out to the security agencies to collaborate and mop up, the people that have not yet been, recaptured back into the Kuje prison, because I mean a lot of them are still AWOL. So like you said, an offshoot of the security meeting that was recently had, that's on the one side. How possible do you think it is going to be for the architecture of security that we have in Nigeria? Do you think that they have the resources? One, do they have the willpower to actually go in and make sure that every one single person who escaped from that Kuje prison is brought back? Number two, over the years, especially since the advent of Boko Haram and all of those things, we've continually heard of probes, of names that are going to be mentioned and listed for corroborating, with terrorists in Nigeria. But years have gone down, over 10, 15 years. We haven't seen for once the federal government, through successive governments, ever bringing out this list of persons. Now it goes beyond catching the people that are perpetrating the day-to-day terrorism action, the bandits. What happens to the upline, the big boys who are sitting and, and calling the shots? We have a security expert we oftentimes speak with, and he would say that Nigeria has all of the information that it needs to, square the score with the bandits in Nigeria, but why aren't they using the information at their disposal?
Back to the Kuje experience. Remember, I think it was the DSS that said that they had given security reports about 6 times, which were ignored. And there was conversation in public domain because when when there was that train attack where travelers were abducted, and along the line, it was like speculated that, the release of those people was predicated upon an agreement to release some inmates and all of that. We cannot place our fingers on that, but those were some of the conversations in domain. So if truly there were exchanges which were not direct, as in release bandits or terrorists, and so that they can release the people they have abducted. And talking about abduction, you remember the Akwa Ibom core members are in the kidnappers' den. So if some terrorists are released based on whatever negotiations, government knows better how to manage security information. But when you talk about the issue of funding, I don't think in the history of this country, the last since 1960, the budget, the entire expenditure on security within the last 8 years and now, I'm sure will surmount whatever we've spent 50 years behind. So the issue is not funding. The issue is even the corruption in the security arrangements, because remember the National Assembly invited some of the service chiefs to come and answer questions, and even one of them, assets were forfeited and some amount frozen and all of that. But the worst of it all is that we have some non-state actors who are religious leaders, who are community leaders, somebody or some persons will be bold enough to say that these bandits, these terrorists are freedom fighters for their section of the country. Two, and one of them actually said during the last elections that any presidential candidate or party that will want to fight bandits should not be supported. It's in public domain. And so banditry and terrorism has become an industry. So it's a very, very huge challenge on the country, because even these people that say this, that bandits are freedom fighters or terrorists are freedom fighters, nothing has happened to them. They have not been called to question. And they are still walking free. So it's a very huge challenge. And some persons who were even accused of being relating with terrorists, some of them have found their ways to public offices. Yes. And what do you expect? Some of the terrorists who were said to be released as repentant, we've seen some of them going back, becoming a problem. And we've seen some non-state actors mediating between government and these terrorists, going to the forest to meet with them, whereas this same forest that even the security agencies don't go there on their own. But they will go there with security agencies, just going with them, and then the terrorists will carry their arms and talk, and we see the video, we see the conversations, and one of them was even conferred with a very high-ranking traditional title in one of the northern states that raised eyebrow. Yeah, so it's a very huge problem, which we cannot just wish that someday it will go away. We've got to be very determined, very intentional to fight it, because the prospects of making money, very easy money, from that industry would not allow those people to back down until they meet a higher firepower. And that must be done soonest. Otherwise, the present administration will be seen to be complicit.
Serious conversation. The president's administration will be seen as complicit if they do not go ahead to execute in line with the information at their disposal and bring security. Well, we hear that under the Tinubu administration that there is some form of glimpse of hope with how insecurity is going to be handled in the country. Let's hope to see that beyond the glimpse of hope that something strong will be done. We've recently had lots of reports from the Nigerian Air Force, saying, oh, they nabbed this terrorist site today, this banditry hideout. I mean, just this one on the front page of the National, we have 12 pro pilots, for all of these kinds of A rates that have been decorated. So it looks like there is something being done. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to say something. The hope is not just in a mantra. The hope is something that we must work towards to achieve. But as presently structured, the defense ministry is one-sided, and even one of the ministers has been called out by a governor of his state. That's a former governor of Zamfara State, Matawale. He's the Minister of State for Defense, and the governor of the state currently, and the video is there. The commissioner spoke, alleging that the governor was complicit in some relationship with terrorist funding, support, and all of that, and the conversation has not died. And we have the minister from the north, Minister of Defense is from the north, and we have Minister of State from the north, whereas insecurity is across the country. We have very serious insecurity issues.
If we had lots to do, wouldn't you have contributed?
In the south. So I want to see, and I'm recommending that apart from the bad impression given by the sitting governor of Zamfara State over the former governor on security issues, that ministry should be tinkered. There should be somebody from the south, any part of the southern Nigeria, to act as the Minister of State or even the minister. There must be a swap. As presently structured, it is one of the low points in the leadership recruitment of the President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration.
Having a minister from the south at that position, do you think it's going to affect the quality of work done, especially because we know that the herb of this insecurity is mostly northeast, and all of those.
Not quite. Sorry to cut in.
Yeah, I know that it is widespread insecurity issues, but then we usually are talking Borno, we are talking all of those states in the north.
You can't fail to talk about Imo states. You can't fail to talk about
that's a sectional issue.
No, it's not quite.
It's a broad sectional issue. All of which still comes under insecurity. Yes, it's a broad spectrum of insecurity. So we have two major hotspots. The crisis in the southeast and the crisis up north.
Yes.
In the centers that are hotspots.
Yes.
So that's why I'm asking. Do you think that having a person in the south, a person from the south rather, in that position, do you think it is going to help us to balance out our approach to handling these cases?
Intelligence gathering. It's impossible for you to bring a novice here and you expect him to understand the language, understand the politics, understand the intricate issues that has to do with the environment. In fact, when I saw that appointment, I was embarrassed
But same will go for a southerner who has to serve the insecurity needs of those in the north.
No. We have minister and minister of state. The two
Cannot be
should
from,
not.
okay. So let's I think that's pretty much answers the the question. So just before we go, in less than a minute, we have a problem on our hands. We had some youth corps members who were on their way to NYSC camp in Zamfara State, who were abducted, mostly Akwa Ibom sons and daughters, and I think it has happened twice in the course of corps members going to camp. There's been a recent advocacy by Akwa Ibom People's Congress, right, asking for the release of these persons. Letters have been written to the president, written to the state governor. What exactly is going? It's been 100 days or more since this happened, and we've had 2 sets of people come out of the NYC camp already. What is the fate of these persons?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, Ibom People's Congress is registered in the US, and it is headed by Professor John G. Okun. We have the board chairman in the person of distinguished Professor Hilary Young. I happen to be the global director of communications, and it's an advocacy group. It's not a socio-political, it's not a socio-cultural group. It's non-partisan, and they speak for justice and for development. And when they watched, we watched what has been happening. That I think that was August 17 or thereabout. Our sons and daughters who were going to Sokoto to serve the country and the mandatory National Youth Service program were abducted in Zamfara. And we had believed that government would swing into action immediately to rescue those patriots. But unfortunately, yesterday, in fact today it's about 100 days now, they've been in captivity, and we've seen video, we've seen letters from the parents that government at any level has not reached out to them. And the trauma on them, it made Ibom People's Congress, otherwise called IPC, to hold a press conference where we want to draw the attention of the government and the people that we should not keep quiet. There's no organization that has done that in the last 4 months to seek for the release of these abducted corps members. Interestingly, another set was kidnapped on November 1st.
Yes.
And it was just yesterday, it was on your station, you're doing, Spectrum is doing a wonderful job. You hosted the father of one of the abductees that was in Kogi State, Pastor Harry Udo, and he narrated his experience. We were looking for that information. We could not even see it. We will have added to the letter that we had written to Mr. President, which was delivered. We've written to Mr. President, copied the Senate President, copied the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The Senate President happens to be dismissed Senator Godswill Bodokpabio. He's from Akwa Ibom State. And Tajuddin Abbas, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We wrote to the National Security Advisor. We wrote to the Governor of Akwa Ibom State, and they were served. And we have certified copies that those letters were received. The appeal is that Mr. President should use his presidential powers to secure the release of our sons and daughters and the driver of the AKTC bus who is in captivity. If you look at the pairs I'm wearing here, the pictures are all there. We're calling for them to be freed. But beyond that, we have also made recommendations, 2 options. The first option is drastic reforms of the style and operations of the NYSC scheme. Let members serve in their geopolitical zones, either state or geopolitical zones. And the economic impact of service on the country and on the participants must be redefined. These, our young ones, have given so much. Some of them get killed during elections. Some of them get raped. Some of them are even missing till date. And a number of these cases are even unreported. So we want that reforms so that these people can be skilled up during the training. And then they could come out with benefit, because we cannot rely on government jobs and all of that. And then the second option, if government does not want to do that, within 30 days, we've given a time frame for government to set up a high-powered reform committee. If government is not willing to do reforms, let government scrap the NYSC. It was a post-war arrangement for integration. It served the purpose then, but it's been bastardized now. The risk, the losses is too much on parents and the participants. So that is the position of Igbo People's Congress. And we are buying in. We are telling other groups and organizations, like you've seen Open Forum has joined. Other groups and organizations should sign up so that we can together drum this across the world to make government to come to the rescue of our children.
It's a really serious conversation, but we apologize. That's the much we can take. It's a really, really serious call to the federal government and every agency that can actually help. The NYSC was a post-war initiative to foster unity. Now, it's been several years down the line. Is there still a need for the NYSC scheme? Well, big question there that Citizen Matthew O'Connor has left on the table. But that's where we draw the curtains this morning until we return to your screen next week. We do hope that we'll get some good news. My name is Uyai, and again, thanks for doing this. Let's meet again next week.